All right, we are on with Mullieka. I recently got the pleasure of meeting Mullieka and getting to know her. She's currently a senior consultant at the Poirier Group, but for the past, 20, 30 years, she's been a manufacturing operations executive, leading large-scale initiatives to transform business performance. But not only that, she has also helped companies transform their organizational culture and has an ability to objectively look at businesses and be able to really understand what it is that they lack or find different gaps in, and build their long-term strategies for them, obviously keeping the people and obviously thought leadership as well in mind when doing all of this. I think that is accurate, Mullieka, but I will definitely let you, take the stage and introduce yourself to the guests as well. So thank you, by the way, for joining. Super excited to chat with you.
Thank you. And thank you for making me feel so good about myself. When you said it that way, it feels pretty good about some of the things I've done. I think you've cut it all, Reza. The only thing that I would like to add to that would be, I see myself as championing the underdog. I love to provide my experiential learning, give it to people that are well on their way to becoming, very successful in their own right, and impart my knowledge and help see them succeed.
Beautiful, beautiful. Your background is chemical engineering, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So,
Yes.
so you also do have a kind of an analytical, background and focus as well.
I do. At the time of back in high school, way back when, I had a love of chemistry and mathematics, and really was at a quandary to figure out, what do you want to do with this? And so it was the analytical aptitude and the love of chemistry that caused me to choose my chemical engineering discipline.
I see.
And I definitely love numbers, analyzing, problem solving, and doing it in a fact-based way gives us a lot of opportunity to put together solutions that end up sticking for a company.
That's beautiful. I also read in your profile, which was interesting, that you were the only Indian female in your elementary school, right?
Yes. Yes,
And
I grew up in Halifax, Nova Scotia, emigrated from India when I was a small baby, and grew up in Halifax, which at the time was a very, there was no real diversity. I know I was the only Indian girl in my elementary school, and even the only Indian woman in my chemical engineering class in university.
oh wow.
And not to say that that has always been like kind of a problem, but it's one more obstacle or hurdle that one must face and deal. And everything that I've had to go through, I always call myself as going through the school of hard knocks, trying to fit in with a very white culture in Halifax, Nova Scotia in the 60s. Embarking on a male-dominated career, engineering, and trying to make a mark for myself, and at the same time, stay true to who I am as a person. So it was definitely difficult, but like I said, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Yeah, definitely. And all of this builds a lot of resilience, right? Because it's not easy going through or achieving results in certain circumstances, right? So
Correct.
that's interesting. Another thing that I really appreciate about Mullieka, and I've seen that over the time that we've known each other at the Poirier Group, is that she is extremely open to mentoring and helping out other people who are just getting started with their career. And I've seen that a couple of times myself, so really appreciate it.
Yes, we've all heard of the saying that knowledge is power. I take it up one notch. Imparting knowledge is priceless.
Imparting knowledge, that's beautiful. It is priceless, right? Because there's no telling what the other person that you're imparting this knowledge to is going to do, right? It's like planting a tree for
Yes.
future generations.
Correct. And so to be able to, I think that, when one can realize, and as I'm sure you're in the same situation, yeah, in our time together, let me give you some kudos, and that I saw you have a willingness to step in, and you come in with a can-do attitude, and you want to do whatever's required to get the job done. It's not about titles. It's not about, that's not my job. That's not what I'm here for. So similarly for me, what I love to do is not sit on my bag of experiences that I've gained along the way, but what if I told you about a similar thing and then gave you a bit of information that allows you to take it and kind of put your slant on it, and it can be even better. And that's really the whole basis on which continuous improvement is really premised on, right?
That's very true. That's very true. When you involve people rather than, just telling them what to do, when you involve them, then it definitely sticks a lot longer, and they do appreciate that you taught them how to fish rather than constantly fish for them.
Correct, correct.
So Mullieka, I do want to talking about mentorship and talking about helping others. I do wanted to was curious and wanted to ask you, who do you look up to for your inspiration, whether it's let's say in life or in business? Is your main source close friends? Do you read a lot of books? Do you have a particular person who you're constantly inspired by?
Well, so from the term constantly inspired, it's been my father.
Okay.
It's been my dad from day one. And so I like how you phrase the mentorship, and how I've used mentorship to help me in my career. I've had my dad my entire life champion me and say there's nothing that's impossible. With the right backing, with the right confidence, with the right education, there's nothing you can't conquer. My father put it in our heads as children really early on, that we've come to Canada, this beautiful country. And I always say I was made in India, and I was born in India and made in Canada. And I mean that sincerely, that it was a blessing to come to Canada. Life changed completely for not only my family, but our family back in India as well. And the one thing my dad said, he knew for a fact that he would never go without, because he took the time to get his education, got a good job when he came to Canada, and he instilled that value in us as children. When I started working, I started working at Kodak back in the late 80s. And at that time, we had a CEO that I absolutely gravitated to for two reasons. The one thing was he was able to remember my name, which is not Sarah Davis, it is Mullieka Pellerin,
Yeah.
and it's not mainstream. And he met me once, and he called me by my name the second time I met him. And I just admired that quality, the fact that he really got to know people. And I asked him, I said, I would love to have you as my mentor, and would you be available to do it? And he said he would be absolutely happy to do that. And then he left me with a phrase. He said, Mullieka, my job as a leader of the company here is to make sure when anybody walks through my door, that they leave feeling better than when they came in.
Wow.
And I thought, how incredible is that, that if somebody comes to you and they have a problem, or they have a quandary, or they need something solved, and when you leave, you say, you know what? I feel like my shoulders are light. I feel like I was listened to. I feel that person got me. And he says, that's the job of a leader. And I thought, I will take that and tell that to as many people as I can. And that was like 30 years ago.
That's
So he was
beautiful.
my first mentor.
That's beautiful. It's I mean, this is right now kind of labeled as servant leadership too, right?
Yes.
Right.
He was doing servant leadership in the 80s. Okay. He knew that when you use words like top down and bottom up, even though pictorially you know what people are talking about, but really, when you think about how that makes people feel if they're working on value added work, and I mean that if they're touching the product that they're making, not kind of steering the boat, even though both of those things are important to get us to an end destination. The value added being put in by the hands of the people doing the job is absolutely requires us to turn the triangle on its head. And that's what servant leadership's all about, right?
Interesting, interesting. I am curious to kind of dive a little deeper into this mentor-mentee relationship. I wanted to, ask you as well, what do you think the dynamics of a mentor and mentee should be like? Because there's a lot of people currently, starting their jobs that are a few years in and looking for mentors. What's the best way to approach this by selecting the right people, and how to continue having that relationship with them over time, just to make sure that it doesn't get stale?
Well, it's a great question, Reza, and I would say let's even take it back a couple of steps to actually establishing that extremely important relationship that anybody embarking on a career needs to really have. And that is, you need to look, just like when you're looking for a company, the fit of the mentor and the mentee is paramount. It's
Mm,
extremely important that you can connect with that individual, right? That you feel that that mentor is going to serve you well because they get you. But there's a really big component of you making sure that you're clear on what is it the upfront contract needs to be between you and your mentor. In that, are you looking for career direction? Are you looking for professional development opportunities? Are you looking for them to be brutally honest about some of the things that you believe you need to work on and what you need to hone to get better at? It can take on many, many different dimensions, but the mentee really needs to decide what is it that they're going to put on the table as the upfront contract, and make sure that they show up prepared every time. They drive the agenda. Now, the mentor, on the other hand, if you see somebody that you say, you know what, here's an individual in their 40s, they've been working for about 15 years, they've achieved grandeur in such a short period of time, I really feel that's something I want to emulate, right? Then that would be a good fit. But maybe you're looking for somebody who's got empathy, somebody that's got adaptability, somebody that's got great communication skills, and then that attracts you to them. So it's really about you doing your homework and not just saying, I want that person because they're in a high position in the company and therefore I will get visibility or something. I think that that's a very surface level
yeah, yeah.
relationship, and in my mind you owe it to yourself to make it very deep, because the difference between a mentor and your boss or a buddy, for that example, is that that mentor is in your corner, is networking with a different group of people, that's got your back and is willing to talk on your behalf when you're not in the room.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I see. And I definitely see your point on the on the factor of, let's say, success. I mean, it would be a surface level factor to base your decision on as to who you want as your mentor.
Correct. Absolutely. It's like anything, do your homework. When you're looking for a new job, you look at the company values, you see, the industry they're in. Is it something that you can see yourself doing? And I'm not going to say for a lifetime, because back when I started working, usually you stayed in your
Yeah.
career to the
Yeah.
very end, right? But in this generation that we're in now, in the, we're in the, this is 2021. I have to keep thinking back because we did lose a year and a half to COVID, but 2021. What's the next 3 years look like for you, right? And what is it you want to achieve in 3 years? And who's the right person in your group that's going to help you get there?
Hmm.
It's really important to make that decision. So do your homework.
Do your homework. Okay, that's interesting. And talking about mentors and leadership, one of the other things that I know a lot of people, including myself, are looking forward to is getting into leadership positions, right? But that doesn't necessarily come easy, or the route isn't necessarily super clear. I mean, there's not one route to begin with, right? So
Mhm.
from your perspective, over the past few years or past decades that you've been working in high level positions, what do you see as some of the patterns or characteristics of a successful leader or people who
Mhm.
become successful leaders?
Well, because I spent the bulk of my career in manufacturing, um, it's really important to gain the respect of the people in the organization.
Mm-hmm.
And by that, I mean, you need to really know what everybody does, not imagine what everybody does. So what I mean by that is, um, at Maple Leaf Foods, when I was at Maple Leaf Foods, just give you an example, I got my black belt certification, and they had a wonderful program, and Kodak did as well, where you were allowed to spend a pocket of time in a department. As an example, I would be in purchasing, I would be in finance, I would be
Mm-hmm.
in operations, I would be in sales or in marketing. And I would help work on projects within each of those functional groups. What that provided was two things for me: is I got an understanding of the function and what they did to make the company successful. But number two, I got a chance to work on a project with key stakeholders in each of those functions. So now I can actually walk away with saying, you know what? I get what these guys do, and therefore I can speak with some credibility. I've also worked with them on projects, so now they get to know who I am as a person and seen what I was able to deliver collaboratively with the team. And in my opinion, that also helped me make a decision when I came into a leadership position where I wanted to spend my time. So when I think about all of those things, it was really three things came out of it. I was able to ascertain with data-driven decisions where I got a lot of passion and where I was the happiest. I was able to help deliver major transformational results in each of those functions, but also get to know the people. So it's not somebody that's just being dropped into the company. It's somebody that people can say, oh yeah, didn't she work on that project? Or didn't she teach us this? And I did a lot around training individuals and relaying concepts and making sure people got it and never assume anything. So it helped me grow as a person. It helped me grow as a leader. And it also allowed me to come up with a really good data-driven decision on where Mullieka wanted to spend the next 5, 7 years of her career.
Interesting. So one of the main things that I heard out of this is getting to know people and their functions, but obviously also wearing a lot of different hats and being involved in a lot of different projects so you can understand what each function actually does rather than assume what they do.
Yes, and that word is that's the word you stay away from. Never assume anything. Like you can think about, I always look at it this way, and I can poke a little bit of fun at that. When you have the big box consultants, come in, or anybody that comes in as a guru of data and analytics, we can say, oh, if you reduce that person's cycle time on a job by 50% and you factor in the wage they're getting, you can save $1 gazillion. But we never ever factor in the what ifs. Like, okay, if I think it's going to take me 30 minutes to get to a destination, do I factor in traffic? Do I factor in unforeseen things? Well, similarly, when we're trying to figure out cost saving opportunities, never assume you're going to get the full gamut. Like you're not going to get it all. And it's always have like what we call an engineering safety factor that
Mhm.
says, if everything goes perfectly, I think we can save $250,000, and here's my mathematics to kind of put it to test. Uh, the really important thing when we put these improvements in, Reza, is and you're dealing with it every day, is that it's important for the clients we're serving to actually not only show them the data, but walk with them and check back with them in 3 months and say, how's it going? Did the
Mm.
improvements stick? And stay in touch with them. And I think about that as the proper closure of a project. And it's extremely important that we don't assume that everything went well after we left. We should have a closeout process that says we have successfully handed it over to the business. It's no longer a project anymore, and you should be seeing this. And if you're not, we're going to handhold with you and collaborate until you get to that end state.
Yeah, that makes a big difference because most of the time, unfortunately, what happens is you would present a certain set of solutions to the clients, and then after a few months, they kind of revert back to their equilibrium state before you came into the organization, right?
Yes. Well, and the equilibrium state, as you describe it, is their normality, right? It's what
Yeah.
they're used to. It's where they're stable. It's where they're not being stretched into their, what you call your outside your comfort zone, right? And that's what, in a leadership position, just going back to your original question to me about what makes a good leader, a good leader is one that knows what they're great at, but also knows what they're not great at,
Mhm.
and make sure that they surround themselves with the people that can fill in those pockets. So that forces collaboration.
Right. So
And
on that point, and sorry to jump in because I'm very
yeah,
curious about that. So on that point, do you think it's better to surround yourself with people who would complement your weaknesses or just personally work on those weaknesses yourself and turn them into strengths?
so I think it's like anything, both can yield the same end result, but I think they both can work in parallel. So if you're a leader and you're in a company and you're needing to hire people to help you in your division,
Mhm.
I would say I'd be looking for people that are not like you completely, but have the same values that you do. But maybe you're not the financial guru. You're maybe the soft sided, you're the people person. You would recognize that from this individual that you're hiring, you can learn from them,
Mhm.
but they can be that pivotal person making those changes necessary, but never, ever, ever uh, shirk away from the opportunity to learn from that person, because a leader needs to understand that just because they have the title, right?
Mhm.
Um, it doesn't mean they know everything. And the best leaders are the ones that hire smarter than they are.
That's very true. That's very true. And on that point, has there ever been a time in your career where you felt like you've hit a plateau or that you're not growing at a certain place? And like, what did you do about that? Which leaders did you go and speak with? How did you deal with it if that happened?
Yeah, no, when I think about the opportunities that came my way and where I felt I was getting stalled, um, I'll give you an example. That actually happened at Maple Leaf Foods, and I started working at Maple Leaf Foods back in 2004, and I was with them for 14 years. Um, the one thing that I recognized was they had me on some really significant projects as I was getting my black belt certification. And
Hmm.
unfortunately, 4 years into the company that I was with the company, we had a major food safety recall. And what ended up happening was this project that I was on, I was enjoying, it was going well, it ended up getting shut down.
Hmm.
And we ended up having to divert our resources and pivot to the food safety concerns that we had. And I, I like most people, when you start a project, it almost becomes your baby. You want to stay
Yeah.
attached to it. You want to continue doing it. And it took me a long time. I mean, a long time meaning, a few weeks to kind of get a sense of I have, I feel the company has their best interests in me and wouldn't make a decision about pulling me off a project, putting me on a project to jeopardize my career, but more that they recognized it's important to be at the right place at the right time. And so I ended up taking that cloud, and the silver lining was we tremendously improved the food safety protocol at Maple Leaf Foods. We fortified our products so that they were safer than ever. We made sure that the public knew how committed we were to the customer experience and the products, and that without customers, we're nothing. And I would have never had the opportunity to play that role had the cloud of the food safety incident not happen. And so it
So
was a
was it
tremendous growth opportunity.
Right. It was a silver lining then.
Yes, it was. And every kind of cloud does have one.
Interesting. Interesting. Yeah. I mean, there there are certain instances in one's career where you think that you've kind of hit a plateau, but maybe that's just a sign for you to be able to pivot or just look for that silver lining that you're talking about as well.
Correct. And we've already talked about the emotional quotient being empathetic. The IQ, your intelligence quotient is also extremely important. But there's another one that, I came upon a couple of years ago called the AQ. And the AQ speaks to the adaptability quotient. And never more than now, it's really important to take an inventory on yourself and say, how adaptable am I? How easy is it for me to pivot and still be able to be effective?
Mm-hmm.
And I think if we kind of score ourselves against those, things that I've mentioned, it will make you a better leader too. Because in my mind, change is the big resistance right now. And we have to do it more so now than ever. And anything we can learn to get us there quicker, faster, without kind of any kind of casualties along the way will go a long way, because we don't stay stagnant for very long, just like people don't stay in jobs very long
Yeah,
anymore, right?
yeah, that's very true. And I like the term AQ, adaptability quotient,
Quotient.
right?
Yes,
So
yes.
I my hypothesis is when you're younger, you're definitely more adaptable, more flexible, open to change. But as you get older, you kind of get stuck in your ways. So how do you how do you think leaders, especially more mature leaders, can continue remaining adaptable and flexible?
It's an excellent question. So, from the book of Mullieka, I would tell you, have an appetite for learning. And with learning means be willing to change your job, even within the same company. So as an example, when I was at Kodak, I had 10 different positions at Kodak during my 18-year career. That means every 2 years,
A different
I
position.
was changing my role. But I was able to do it. The company was 100,000 big at the time, right? So I was able to do it. They had plants and all in the countries of the world. Like there was 12 different locations. They had a very vertical structure. So, from a manager to a CEO level. So you had very, lots of information, opportunities to grow. So if you push yourself and say, I could be 20 years a VP of operations, or I could be a director of operations, move laterally into a director of purchasing, maybe do a stint in marketing and whatever it is, but get a lateral sense of what's going on.
Yeah.
Keeping that brain challenges and doesn't allow you to be change resistant because you've got it on the go all the time. So read, learn, get yourself out of the comfort zone, and that prepares you. I know a lot of people that have had 30-year careers and they're more change, like want change more than some people that have not had the opportunity to live those experiences.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And you said read, by the way. I'm gonna get to that. I have a few questions about the reading part. But I do also want to ask you, since you've had a lot of different experiences, a lot of different positions, is there any particular experience or accomplishment that you're proud of, like particularly that's bold in your mind?
Yes. So when I was hired at Kodak, um, I was chosen to be one of the first 32 people in the company to represent Canada on the worldwide stage as the first black belt that was trained at Kodak. The
Oh,
first woman black belt in Canada. And so basically there was 32 out of 100,000 people that were on that stage, and I was chosen as one of them. So I was very proud of that moment. I came back, delivered some significant savings to the company, and then was appointed the first female operations manager that Kodak had.
oh wow. I did not know that. That's interesting.
Yeah. And that came with some heavy lifting because we were a unionized facility. and I was in charge of 42 unionized men. There was not one woman in the operation I was in charge of. And they made sure they knew how much they didn't want me to be their boss. We don't report to women. We don't like engineers. And by the way, you're a visible minority and we're going to make your life a living hell. And guess what? I didn't give up. I
So
did what I had to do.
you basically faced opposition on not one, not two, not three, multiple different dimensions, right?
Absolutely.
On your gender, on your ethnicity, on the discipline that you studied in university. That's crazy.
It's right. That's right. I'm telling you, it's like, but the growth and the metamorphosis that took place with that adversity, the person you're talking to today is not the person back from the 1990s, because she had to grow fast, furiously, keep my, what you call like my composure, never ever let them see you sweat, always remain in control and make sure that, reflect on what's been said to you and never shoot back an answer, whether it be an email or a comment right away. Reflect on where the person's coming from, what resistances they may have to you, and try to be empathetic to their standpoint. And even after that, if you feel, you know what, I'm doing what's right for the company, then go for it.
I like that. Don't be reactive, right?
That's it. People want to know what your buttons are at all walks of life, in your professional relationships, with your family, with your significant other, your kids. Everybody wants to know what buttons makes Reza or Mullieka tick, right? And I own the control if I know what those buttons are. It's your job to say, you know what? That's just for me to know. And let's just kind of keep the
Yeah,
conversation going.
that's interesting that you say that, because generally, I always have this in mind, obviously, but there are times when I'm a little impatient or reactive, and that's not cool, because they're gonna know what your buttons are and they're gonna keep pushing them.
That's right. Absolutely. But if it's like bullying, right? The bullies only keep going at you as long as you
Care.
give them fodder. But if
Yeah.
you just ignore them, right? Like like I remember a girlfriend telling me, don't be the audience. Just let them keep doing what they're doing and they'll go away on their own, because it's not fun when you don't get a reaction, right?
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true. So I did also want to ask you this, since you talked about reading, if there were 2 or 3 books that you would recommend to a friend, a loved one, a coworker, anyone, what 3 books would you recommend?
Essentialism. And I'm going to forget, I think the author's name is McEwen, if I remember correctly. And it just talks about needs and wants. So if you want to think about, we're living in a first world country, and a lot of the things that we have, we tend to take for granted. We think, or we deem them as essential.
Mhm.
When you read this book, you really get a sense of feeling. There's a lot of extras that we're carrying around with us that don't need to be there. So really take a look at an inventory of your leadership and what's really required versus just stuff that you have around. So I
Yeah,
read that book about 5 years ago. It was great. Blink was another book that I love, Malcolm
Blink.
Gladwell. The big takeaway from that is, even though it's kind of an oxymoron, people will say, first impressions, like for me, thin slicing and first impressions, because Malcolm talks about thin slicing and the first impressions, they tend to be spot on, right? So you don't need to really have to engage with somebody for too long to really get a better sense of who they are in terms
Mm.
of what is their value system. What you get to know a lot more about the person in terms of interests and stuff, but thin slicing and getting to know a person from a values perspective, I think, is spot on.
Spot on.
You can tell, yeah. And then a really decent friend of mine sent me a book called Power. And Power is a very interesting book in that it's written, I think there's about 100 chapters, and each chapter talks about a personality trait. Okay. So, for example, if you are an outspoken individual,
Uh-huh.
you may feel this is a positive trait, right? The thing is that if it's your boss, he may feel you're trying to outshine him. And or if it's a peer, they may say she's trying to prove herself. So it's always important that all these characteristics that are really fantastic to have, knowing when to turn them on and off is
Mhm.
extremely important. So I really recommend that book. Power is
Power.
really, really good. And it's not one of those that you read end to end. Take a chapter. They give you nice insights into the application of that trait and how it can serve you well and not so well. But yeah, those have been some books I've read along the way. And
Interesting. Power sounds pretty Machiavellian.
it is, it
Yeah.
is, it is. You're spot on.
Yeah.
Get it.
Okay.
Yep.
I'll take a look at these three. So essentialism, blink, and power. I haven't read either of them. I mean, neither of the three. Essentialism is interesting to me. Like, what? Just real quick, what's the difference between essentialism and minimalism?
It's the same.
Same thing, yeah.
Yeah, it's because minimalism is you keep the least, and essential is only the essentials, right? So
That's
it's
true.
really it's one and the same.
Okay, interesting.
Yep.
Thank you for those recommendations.
Yeah, no problem.
So that's really it on my end. I really want to thank you for coming on. If there's anything else, by the way, that we missed that you want to touch on, I'm totally open to that. But really appreciate it.
No, I'm so happy that our paths have crossed, Reza, and that you've given me this opportunity. The message I would like to portray to people is, my career is not over by any stretch, but I've done 33 years of work, learned a lot, met some wonderful people, suffered some knocks and some successes. The thrill that's left for me to achieve, or if I was to leave my mark or legacy, is to try to help as many people that are just starting out, that are bright-eyed, are energized, are passionate, are so smart, to let them achieve and help them achieve the best that they can be.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful, and I'm really looking forward to learning a lot more from you. This is just one episode, but really looking forward to speaking with you more, learning lots more, and definitely getting some of your insights. And hopefully, you learn something from me too. I don't
Oh, well, maybe one day I'm going to be working for you, my friend.
know. Well, no, thank you so much for joining, and it's been a pleasure, having you on and speaking with you.
Same here, Reza. You have a great rest of the night.
Thank you. Take care.